How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JJ Domination, and today we are here to basically give my 2 cents on some trending topics in the NFL right now. I don't know what we're gonna call this, like if it's gonna be like a series or like anything that's officially unofficial, but basically we're gonna be talking about some trending topics in the NFL over this past week, including a coach firing. We're gonna be reacting to the Dallas Cowboys versus Chicago Bears game from last night. We're going to be talking about the New England Patriots for a quick segment, and then we're going to be talking about Tua and if he should declare for the NFL draft, or if he should go back to college. I keep wanting to say she, but Tua's a guy, But you're probably wondering, what the background noise is. I know, I get it. It's a little distracting sometimes, but it's an air filter. If this thing is not on, my room is going to be extremely bad. To the point where you can't breathe in here after 30 minutes. So, yeah, I have to keep it on. I did try to keep it off in my weekly recap. And I was coughing and hacking. That's because it really gets dusty in here. So, yeah, if you're wondering what the hell the background noise is, it is an air filter. And I kind of don't want to die while recording a video for 4 people, so, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to be talking about the Carolina Panthers first. Head coach Ron Rivera gets fired from the Carolina Panthers after losing to the Washington Redskins 29-22. He's going to be getting fired after having a 76-63-1 record, and he has had a 15-1 season, which includes a Super Bowl appearance. He also has had a 12-4 season, which included a division round exit, maybe a championship game, can't quite remember. But he ends up getting fired by the new owner, David Tepper. And David Tepper, for those that don't know, he's the guy that purchased the Carolina Panthers around 2 years ago from the original owner because he had some allegations that came up, forced basically to put the team up for sale. And David Tepper was the guy that cashed in. And one of the things that he said immediately after getting the job was, if this team isn't in a situation to compete, that changes were going to be made. That's basically what he said. Probably not word for word, but that's pretty much what he was trying to say without really putting words into his mouth. And at this point, they're not really competing. I mean, they lost to the damn Redskins, and I don't know if Ron Rivera was, going to get fired or not at the end of the year. I don't know if his job was always in question, but we got our answer pretty much because he was fired with 4 games left into their season. It kind of happened last year, different circumstances, totally different situation. But of course, we know Mike McCarthy for the Green Bay Packers was fired last year. They obviously went out and got a young offensive-minded coach in Matt LaFleur, who has overachieved as a rookie head coach. Still has a lot of work to do in terms of just being a good coach, but he's overachieved up to this point. Shout out to my boy Matt LaFleur. We are really LaFleurishing out here, people. But we're going to be going ahead and talking about what this means for Carolina moving forward. Win or lose these next 4 games, I don't really think it matters. They could go 2-2 over the next 4. It really wouldn't be that surprising. It also wouldn't surprise me if they just lost all 4 of the games. It would surprise me if they went 1-3. Now, if they went 4-0, yeah, that surprised me. But, not really, I guess. Because, they still got some good players on that defense. They got Christian McCaffrey. They got nice young offensive weapons. But it ain't over for Carolina. Obviously, they have to start the head coaching search, and Tepper did say by firing Ron Rivera now, it allows him to really go out there and see what's available for the head coaching, vacancy or whatever. It allows him an opportunity to kind of speak with some guys early, get some, representatives in here. So I guess that's a good thing, and we'll talk more about my thoughts on the firing, but really I'm just trying to give you guys the information first. And what does this mean for Cam Newton? Well, he's probably most likely gone as well. I mean, he was pretty much going to be gone this season because, Kyle Allen started to play well, and he's having another surgery. It's like a $19 million cap hit, which today, just based on how much quarterbacks make, it's pretty much a bargain, just being honest. And Cam Newton is probably going to be on the outs. I'm not going to speculate where he goes. Could be anywhere for all we know. And then, of course, the head coaching vacancy. Like we said, they're going to begin that process now, I'd imagine, and just see who's out there, who's available to speak with after, like, the college football season. They might look in the college ranks and talk to a few guys. So now I'm going to go ahead and just give my thoughts on Ron Rivera. I think he is a pretty good coach. I would say he's above average on the pecking order. He's one of those coaches that I would want to play for. He's just, a tough guy. He resembles tough. He's a family man. I respect guys that are family men when it comes to football as well, because to me, football is family. You preach and teach the brotherhood mentality in football. A lot of people have that approach, and Ron Rivera made it a reality for his guys and for his staff. So to me, that's really important, and that's a trait that goes unnoticed. And he's not necessarily a player's coach. You see, when you think of these rah-rah coaches or these tough coaches, you think they're player coaches. No, Ron Rivera is all about the team. He's all about family first, but he's not necessarily a player's coach. Like, he benched Cam Newton, basically, for Kyle Allen at the end of the season. And, of course, when his hands were forced, he played Kyle Allen instead of just playing Cam Newton. So he's not necessarily a player's coach. Yeah, Cam is his guy. They both are there for basically the same amount of time, but he's not a player's coach, if you get what I'm saying. Now, in my opinion, when it comes to the coaching situation, I don't really know who the best fit is, per se. I've been hearing a lot of rumors about Jim Harbaugh, the head coach at Michigan. We know, like, in the college ranks, he's been fine. They haven't won that game against Ohio State just yet, but Ohio State's pretty damn good. There's a reason they're like a top 3 to 6 team every season. But that's just the one game they haven't been able to quite win yet. Him, being Jim Harbaugh. Shit. I keep mixing them up. John Harbaugh is the Baltimore Ravens head coach. Jim is the Michigan coach. So, I've been hearing Jim Harbaugh's name in rumors for Carolina. I don't think it's the greatest fit, football-wise. I don't really care about what David Tepper's looking for. I mean, he's looking for, like, some innovation, per se. I mean, I don't really, like, define innovation. Like, are you going to get, like, an offensive guy? Are you going to get a guy who, wants the old-school mentality but is going to mix up, with the new school? Like, what exactly are you looking for in your coach? I don't know, but it brings up another interesting discussion as well, the quarterback situation. Of course, we talked about Cam. He could probably be on the move, but is Kyle Allen really going to be the guy, or are they going to head in a different direction for quarterback? Now, for me, personally, I think Kyle Allen's fine. I don't think he's like a franchise quarterback per se. I think he's fine. Like, he's shown he could play. He's shown he could do some things. He's still got a lot of growing pains as a guy that's going to play a lot, in the league or whatever. Like, there are late game situations where he really isn't, like, you kind of know that he's a backup, but just based on his situations late in games, because he makes a lot of mental errors. But it's going to be interesting to see how they assess the quarterback position. Are they going to draft someone? Are they going to go get like a Teddy Bridgewater or potentially a Phillip Rivers, who has a history with Norv Turner, who is the current offensive coordinator in Carolina? Those are things that you also have to keep in mind, is the familiarity factor. And I guess we could talk about Ron Rivera and potential head coaching vacancies. And I say potential because some of these jobs might be available, some of them won't. But we're just going to throw some out there. Don't be offended if it's your favorite team. I mean, your coach is probably getting fired anyway, but you might as well just like get a preview of Ron Rivera. So we're going to start off, of course, with the big elephant in the room, the Dallas Cowboys. You might as well just pencil them in there. The Atlanta Falcons, the New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Washington Redskins. I mean, let's just start off with that list. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a team or two. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Oh, yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I guess we could throw them in there. To me, Washington is not that appealing of a job, and I'm just going to keep it a buck. And it's no offense to Redskins fans. It's just there's nothing really there that's appealing other than potentially Dwayne Haskins. And it would really depend on how the coach feels about Dwayne Haskins. And it would also be interesting because Ron Rivera just played the Redskins. He just got an up-close and personal look at Dwayne Haskins. To me, it would just really depend, you know? It really just depends. I don't think it's that attractive of a job. I wouldn't really go for it. Let's see, the Cincinnati job, it's kind of in the same boat. They're more talented than Washington. They have some guys that can play. I think they just need better coaching, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Ron Rivera certainly brings that to Cincinnati. I just don't know if it's an appealing job for him, per se. And then, of course, next we got the Atlanta Falcons. You know, I don't know if they're going to actually fire Dan Quinn or not. I've been saying for several weeks, I love the guy. I think he's a good guy. He's one of the guys I'd play for, but you got to fire him. He's not moving the needle anymore. You're not contending anymore. And you got to make a lot of changes if you're Atlanta. And that's why I respect Carolina for doing what they're doing. I like Ron Rivera, but it was clearly time for a change. And David Tepper, the owner, saw that and made changes. And if it backfires on him, yeah, it's going to suck. It's going to make him look like an idiot. But the fact that he's willing to take this risk only 2 years after buying this team just shows me everything I need to know about him, and that he's willing to move off of assets if they don't meet requirements and deadlines and, you know, things like that, business talk, you know. And, you know, the Atlanta job to me would be very appealing. I mean, Matt Ryan's a veteran quarterback. He's probably going to be around for about, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, probably even longer than that, depending on, you know, if his health stays up and, you know, he doesn't get stiff-armed to the ground on Thanksgiving. You know, you got Julio Jones, of course. Calvin Ridley's a very talented receiver. The defense, I mean, there's players on this defense. It's not a great unit, but they do have some talent, of course. You got Grady Jarrett and Deion Jones, two of my greatest draft hits. A good friend that I got to meet at Falcons training camp with my real-life best friend, Aaron, Isaiah Oliver. I think he can play a little bit. He's definitely shown flashes this year that he can definitely play. But there's talent on the defense. I think it just takes a good defensive coach to really get those guys going, get them playing to their potential. And we know Ron Rivera likes a 4-3 defense, and he will play 3 linebackers on the field a lot, you know, kind of like what Pete Carroll does. So I think this team would be good for that because they got, you know, at least 2 linebackers that I think can play. Devondre Campbell, he's had his moments. He's a free agent this year, I'm pretty sure. But that Atlanta job would be interesting. I don't know if he'd take it just to stick it to the Panthers, but, you know, I'm just going to say he doesn't take it. The Cowboys job, of course, the most polarizing job. And we'll talk more about the Cowboys later. I think football-wise it makes sense, but I just don't see it happening. I don't think Ron Rivera is flashy enough of a move for Jerry Jones. I think he's a little bit out of his league there in terms of flashiness. Let's see, then you got the Cleveland Browns, another polarizing job, but he's a good defensive-minded coach, like we said, and this defense definitely can play. They run the 4-3, they have good personnel, they have talent. Like, it would make sense, but somehow Cleveland would still screw it up. And then that leaves us with the New York Giants. To me, you know, it's probably the one that he would take, and I wouldn't blame him for taking it. There's a history there between him and the current general manager, Dave Gettleman. Of course, they have a history. They worked together in Carolina. They drafted very well together. I'm not 100% sold on Daniel Jones. Like, yeah, I like him. He's done some great things. I've given him a ton of props this season for the things that he's done. I don't know if I'm sold on him if I'm Ron Rivera or the Giants necessarily. Like, he's not even playing this week. A lot of that is because of an ankle injury. I understand. Everyone's a little different with those. It's something I'd be cautious about too if I had fragile ankles. Let's see here. And then also, like, the defense. There's not really a building block on the defense. You have a good defensive line, but are you really going to build your team, you know, around a very replaceable position like defensive line, where you can find production literally off the street for like minimum wage in the NFL, that being? And, you know, also, like, this team needs an overhaul at the linebacking position. They need some secondary help. They seem to have found something there with a late round pick in Julian Love, who is playing free safety actually for this team. He was looked at more as his own corner anyway. But that secondary needs an overhaul, and the linebackers desperately need some help. So that would just be very interesting if he took the Giants job. Maybe he could be a part of like the process there. And then for Jacksonville, you know, they're a pretty talented football team as well, but you do have this like cloud hanging over the head of like Nick Foles, Gardner Minshew, like who's going to be the guy moving forward. And then, you know, you got to rebuild the defense a little bit. I mean, you got guys that you have to pay, so on and so forth. You know how this thing goes. Jacksonville, their window is closed. I mean, remember in 2017, they were like the hottest team in the league. Sacksonville, but they didn't even lead the NFL in sacks. You know, that it's funny how teams that aren't even number one in what they do best get a nickname. But anyway, it's all good. Yeah, in 2017, they were like the hottest thing, and then last year they kind of shit the bed, and this year, basically the same. They've reverted back to what Jacksonville is known for, which is not being a good football team. So for Ron Rivera, probably the Giants and the Cowboys football-wise makes sense. We'll have to wait and see. He's definitely going to get an offer out there. And who knows? It might be for a completely different team we didn't even bring up. You know, like maybe the Chargers for all we know. But it should be interesting. And speaking of things that are interesting, yeah, you know, I have to come up with segues, man. It's going to be a tough day at the office. Speaking of, you know, just all that cool stuff, we're going to be talking about the New England Patriots for a second. And this is probably going to be brief because, you know, I think people are crazy. But let's just go ahead and get into it. Is the Patriots dynasty actually coming to an end this season, or is it a typical overreaction to one game? And I have the answer, and it's a typical overreaction to one game. They lost their second game of the season to the Houston Texans this past Sunday. It was a rough game for everyone. The receivers didn't play well. Brady really didn't play well until like the fourth quarter, when the game was basically out of reach. The defense didn't really have their best day either. The offensive line was getting beat here and there. Interior pressure was really starting to get going for the Houston Texans. Like, yeah, it was a rough day at the office for everyone. So, yeah, the Patriots didn't look good. But I've just seen this story play out a lot over the last 5 years. Just when you think the Patriots are vulnerable, they come back, they punch you in the mouth, they run up the score, and then all of a sudden they're magically playing in an AFC championship game. And they magically get to a Super Bowl, and they somehow win it, even though their dynasty was supposed to be over, they said. So I'm not going to overreact to the Patriots losing to the Texans. Do they look like a beatable football team? Do they look like a team that you can beat? Yes, absolutely. I don't think anyone would question that. Anybody with football sense is going to question that. But we've seen this over and over. Last year they lost to 5 teams that didn't even make it to the postseason. You know, like when they lost to Detroit, were you guys going bonkers about how, you know, their season's over, the dynasty's over? Yeah, I mean, we've heard freaking Max Kellerman on ESPN First Take for like 3 seasons say that Brady's going to fall off a cliff. And, you know, statistically, he's not looking the best, but the Patriots keep winning. And, you know, he's definitely contributed to some of that. You can't just say it's been the defense carrying him. Yeah, his stats don't look the greatest, but Brady, you know, makes his plays here and there. He does what he needs to do. It's not all just Patriots defense, Bill Belichick, they're carrying Tom Brady. It's not always that way. Like, come on, you know? Like, relax, people. I don't think the dynasty's over. I'll believe it when I see it. You know, if they lose by 10 points to the Cincinnati Bengals, I'd start to panic and say it's over. But until that day comes, I don't think so. You know, like, I think this team will definitely be a deep playoff team. And it wouldn't shock me if they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, you know? I mean, they're at home. I can't see them losing back-to-back. And both of their losses have been on the road. I mean, last year, they were 8-0 at home, 3-5 on the road. You know, they were a below-average road team according to their record, and yet they went on the road and beat Kansas City, you know? So, say what you want, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. And the Patriots are not just like any other team. And I've heard comments about, if this were any other team, you'd be saying it's over. Yeah, that's probably true, but there's only one dynasty in the NFL at a time, and this one is still going, and, I wouldn't overreact. History has shown us that the Patriots are vulnerable to losing eventually, but end up picking things up, and they sometimes get you where they want you. They want us to think, that they're in a vulnerable state as a franchise, as a dynasty. They want you to think that. They only have 2 losses on the year, and, in the postseason, anything can happen. We talk about some of these teams like, oh, if they get in the postseason, anything can happen. Well, for the Patriots, it's the same way. If they don't get a bye, I would be a little bit concerned, even if it's just the 2 seed and they don't get it. I'd be a little bit concerned. But, like I said, anything can happen, and I'll believe it when I see it. Now, on to the third subject. Is Tua, going to declare for the draft? Should Tua declare for the draft or bet on himself and go back to college for his senior year? This is always a touchy subject, and it always brings out a lot of different outlooks and perspectives and different opinions, which is why I like to talk about, like, if prospects should go back to school or not, because there's evidence out there saying that if you have like a lot of draft stock right now, when you go back, you're not as good when you declare once again. You look at Matt Barkley from USC. He was pretty good at USC. I ain't gonna lie to you. Back then I was watching a lot more college ball than I am now, but Matt Barkley was pretty damn good at USC, and he was being talked about as like the 3rd best quarterback in the class with Andrew Luck and RG3, and he, late first round buzz potentially, and he decides, I'm going to go back to school. He did. Good for him. I'm glad that he decided to stay there with his school for all those years. There's nothing wrong with going back to school, and he didn't play as well. His draft stock fell from like a late 1st to 5th round pick. He never really had a home in the NFL. He has kept a roster spot to a degree for most of his seasons. He has gotten to play even for like the Buffalo Bills, but he has just never really found a home, and he never really lived up to that 1st round buzz that he got his junior year, where he should have came out. And then, of course, at a different position, you have Bryce Love, the running back. He was the second coming of Christian McCaffrey there, because he was your all-purpose, do-it-all running back. And he even started to garner 1st round buzz in 2018 with Saquon Barkley in the class, and he started to get some of that buzz. But then he decides to go back to school his senior year, and this is more unfortunate. It's not even like a poor play thing. It's he got hurt. But yeah, he gets hurt, and he falls to like a 4th round pick, but in a way that's still a W, because like a lot of people thought he would go undrafted for sure. But he could have potentially been a 1st or early 2nd round pick, and he didn't really get to capitalize on that. He really hasn't played much for the Washington Redskins, because they have Darius Geis, Adrian Peterson, Chris Thompson, and Bryce Love. He's like the 4th running back, but he's a good running back. I can't wait to actually see him play. But now, talking about Tua, what would I do? If I were Tua, would I go back to school or would I go for the draft? 100%, I'm going for the draft. And I know some people would probably think, oh, why wouldn't you go back to school? It's risky. And recent history has shown us that if you're a highly touted prospect, even with a hip injury as severe as Bo Jackson's career ender, if you still have 1st round buzz, why would you go back to school? When you can capitalize on that 1st round money, be locked up for 5 years on a contract, making money, and hell, you may not even have to play your first like year and a half into the league. You could just recover. And there will be teams out there who are in a luxury position to not necessarily need you right away to come play. You look at a team like the Indianapolis Colts. They don't necessarily need Tua to come back and play immediately because they have Jacoby Brissett. But it would be a luxury to have Tua in a low-risk situation because you already have Jacoby Brissett. Worst thing that happens is Tua just sucks and he ends up being a bust, which that is still possible whether he goes back to school for another year or not. And also, you look at a team like the New Orleans Saints. You know, all three of their quarterbacks are free agents, and they're probably going to keep Taysom Hill and potentially Drew Brees, but Bridgewater's going to get a lot of interest. I imagine, after not really taking the bag last year, I imagine Teddy Bridgewater does this season. And, you know, a team like the Saints, who are aware that we just lost Teddy Bridgewater, you know, I'm pretty sure they would take a shot at Tua if he were still on the board in the late 20s. You know, like, I imagine a team like that would definitely take a shot. And then I heard this scenario on Pro Football Focus. I don't 100% agree with it, but, you know, it could happen, and it wouldn't shock me if it did. But what about the Green Bay Packers? You know, oh, yeah, JJ, do you co-sign your team drafting a quarterback, you know, with Aaron Rodgers just turning 36? It's possible. Remember, when Favre was, I think, 34 years old, they drafted Aaron Rodgers, and he was supposed to be, like, the top quarterback taken, and he slipped, and he slipped, and he slipped until, like, pick 24, and then Green Bay went and got him. You know, the rest is history. I'm so glad to have Aaron Rodgers, but, you know, this team could potentially draft Tua, and that's a situation that I saw in a Pro Football Focus mock draft or whatever. And to me, it's a very interesting scenario because outside of, you know, wide receiver and a coverage linebacker, there's not really much there that we actually need that really needs to be improved. And, you know, this wide receiver class, from what I've heard and what I've actually been able to see, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty good wide receiver class. At linebacker, you know, you got Dylan Moses, who's hurt, could probably declare. You have Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma. Outside of that, I really don't know. I'll have to do my research on that. I have to watch film, as the cool kids say, including myself. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see, man. Very interesting stuff. I would declare, I understand, you know, why you wouldn't if you're the team of people arguing for why, you know, I wouldn't do that. I'd stay. Like, I understand the argument for it, and I'm not completely against it. But if you have an opportunity to make some money, like real NFL money, as a first rounder, even after suffering what could be a career-ending injury similar to what Bo Jackson had, I mean, I would take that risk on myself because you're going to get the bag. You know, this is a draft where, you know, there's some guys that can play at the quarterback position. You got Joe Burrow, you got, you know, Jake Fromm, Justin Herbert, what's the kid's name? Jacob Eason, and then a guy that I really like, Jalen Hurts, you know, but it's going to be interesting, you know, and people still think Tua is going to be the number one guy out of that bunch, or at least the number 2 or 3 guy out of that bunch. And you know what? I've seen quarterbacks mocked in, like, 3 or 4 quarterbacks literally mocked in the first round. And if people are thinking Tua can at least be the second or third best quarterback, then that means he's probably going to be a first rounder. And for me, if I'm Tua, I'm taking that bag 100%. You got to do what you got to do. Secure it early while you can. School's always going to be there for people. Like, you could drop out of school now. You could go back in like 5 years and pick up where you left off, or restart if that's what you choose to do. You know, and restart with something new. But like for Tua, school's always going to be there. Like Clinton Dix for Green Bay, of course, now with Chicago, played for Washington for a little bit. You know, he played for the Packers and still managed to finish up his degree at Alabama in the summer. So there's just proof that you can come to the NFL as a first-round pick from Alabama even, and you can finish up your school in the summer. They do summer classes, you know. I hate doing them because I still treat summer like I'm a damn kid, you know. I want my 2 months off. But, you know, like, school's always going to be there. So for the people that are arguing for Tua to go back to college, I understand. It makes sense. I don't necessarily disagree because, to me, whatever Tua decides to do, I'm going to support it because at the end of the day, it is his career. His body is his biggest investment as a NFL prospect, and he needs to do what's best for himself But if it were me, I'm getting the bag, and if I'm really serious about school and getting a degree, I'll get that degree later. I gotta play ball right now. And finally, we're gonna go ahead and react to the Cowboys game. Just a simple reaction. I'll actually break down the game for the Wednesday recap, but now I just want to give like my 2 cents about what I saw out there. I'll break it down more, obviously. It was being said not too long ago that like the Cowboys defense makes every quarterback comfortable. Mitchell Trubisky probably, despite throwing an early interception, which was just a great play by Jordan Lewis, the corner, Mitchell Trubisky probably had his best game of the year against Dallas's defense. Like, when's the last time Chicago has put up 30 plus in a game? Like, seriously, when's the last time they've done that? Like, we know their defense is good. They give up like 17, 18 points a game. They gave up 24 here to Dallas. Nothing wrong with that, obviously. It's going to happen. Dallas has the most passing yards in the league with Dak Prescott. It's going to happen, But, I mean, Mitchell Trubisky just had a career game, basically. Had the best game of his damn season. It just doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I'm not going to take away anything from Mitchell Trubisky. He made a lot of great throws in that game Thursday, from what I've seen. But, damn, man, like, this team just looks uninspired right now. They really look like a mess. I don't know if they're going to win a division. Philadelphia keeps giving them hope. I mean, if they keep fucking around and losing to the Dolphins. Like, this week they play the New York Giants at home on Monday Night Football. I think there has to be a sense of urgency, right? There has to be. But I don't know anymore. This division, I've been seeing people say that, like, we shouldn't even have a winner come out of this division. And I would agree. But it's kind of how the rules are. Unfortunately, like, one of these 8-8 teams potentially are going to have to win the goddamn division. And it could be Dallas. But I don't know, man. I'm not really a fan of what's going on in the NFC East. Good call by me and a lot of other people to predict the NFC East to be the worst division in football, because it absolutely has been. It's not even close. Like, the 3-9 Washington Redskins could still win the division. That's how horrible it is. It's that bad, people. I mean, a team that is projected to be drafting in the top 5 if the season ended this year could still win the whole thing. That's how horrible this division is. The dysfunctional Redskins could win the division. That's embarrassing. I would not want to be in the division where a 3-9 football team could win out and have other shit happen and be a 7-9 division winner. I would not want to be that in the division with that team, because that's just embarrassing. That's a poor reflection of your division. And, like, you have the lowest win percentage by a wide margin in that division. It's not even close. Like, that division just sucks. So that's really, like, my mini rant on, the game per se. Obviously, Jason Garrett hasn't been fired yet. It probably won't happen till the end of the year or sometime in the off season. I don't know, man. I just don't know. I don't know about Dallas. I'll break this team down more on the Wednesday recap. I just wanted to give my early 2 cents on it. And I actually made a little post on social media. I said that the Dallas Cowboys this season, it's like the girl in high school that keeps leading you on thinking you have a chance, only for you to be let down over and over and to be rejected. And that's kind of how the Cowboys have been this season. They give you false hope. They make you think, look at our roster. We have a top 5 roster on paper. We're talented. We're going to win a bunch of games. And then you realize they're 6-7, and they haven't beaten a team with a winning record, or better than a winning record, I guess, 500 or better. So that's just, that's bad. But hopefully you guys enjoyed like me doing this type of video where I talk about like just, you know, many different things across the league. If you guys want me to do this like weekly, maybe on a Friday, you know, let me know down below in the comment section below. And peace out.